My name is Elena Carter. I'm 36 years old now, financially independent, and living a life that no longer requires anyone's approval. But 7 years ago, I was just a woman in love with a man whose family had already decided I wasn't enough. I met Daniel when I was 29 and he was 31. It was at a gallery opening, one of those quiet, white wall spaces where people pretend to understand abstract art. I was standing in front of a painting longer than necessary, trying to decode whether it was genius or nonsense, when he walked up beside me. "You're actually looking at it," he said, amused. "Most people are just scanning the room." I laughed. "I'm trying to decide if I'm impressed or confused." "That's the right reaction," he replied. He came from old money, the kind where last names open doors before you knock. I was building my own consulting practice, respectable income, unpredictable growth, no safety net. For the first 18 months, none of that mattered. We spent Saturdays at farmers markets, Sunday hikes, late nights in dive bars with live music. He never made me feel small, never made me feel like I didn't belong beside him. When I met his family around month 8, I knew I was being evaluated. His father's handshake lingered half a second too long. His mother's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. His older sister, married to a venture capitalist, asked detailed questions about my long-term scalability. Daniel squeezed my hand under the table. After dinner, his father said, "You seem grounded." I thought it was a compliment. Later, I realized grounded was code for limited. They owned commercial real estate across 3 states. His father had inherited a portfolio and tripled it. His mother sat on nonprofit boards. His younger brother was being groomed to take over operations. And then there was me, self-employed, state school graduate, daughter of 2 public school teachers who believed stability was success. For the first year, they tolerated me. Polite dinners, cool conversations, questions that sounded curious but felt like audits. Then, around month 20, something shifted. Daniel's ex-girlfriend started appearing again. Her name was Victoria. She'd grown up in the same world as him. Private schools, family estates, finance connections. She worked in investment management now. Impressive, strategic, socially seamless. At family dinners, his father would casually say, "You should reconnect with Victoria. She's managing a fund now, very sharp." Daniel would stiffen, change the subject. I'd pretend not to notice. Then she started showing up to events. Always polite, always gracious, never overtly territorial, which made it worse. His mother would seat her next to Daniel. His father would light up discussing markets with her. I would sit there, smiling, invisible. One night, after 3 hours of being professionally ignored while Victoria held court, I finally spoke up in the car ride home. "They're pushing her on you pretty hard." He exhaled slowly. "I know, it's embarrassing." "Have you told them to stop?" "I have. Clearly not loudly enough." He gripped the steering wheel. "What do you want me to do? Cause a scene at dinner?" "I want you to set a boundary." Silence. Streetlights flashed across his face in intervals. Light, shadow, light, shadow. "I can't just cut them off," he said finally. "I'm not asking you to." But I was asking him to choose. Over the next 6 months, the pressure intensified. His mother asked about my 5-year plan, my retirement strategy, whether I'd considered something more permanent. Daniel grew distant, canceled plans, took longer to respond. When we were together, his mind felt elsewhere. I knew what was happening. I just didn't know how to stop it. Then, 2.5 years in, he asked if we could talk. He came to my apartment instead of asking me to come to his. That should have told me everything. "My parents want to have a serious conversation this weekend," he said, not meeting my eyes. "About us, about my future." "And what are you going to tell them?" He twisted the ring I'd given him for his birthday. Not an engagement ring, just something simple. "I don't know. They're going to make it about loyalty, about what's best for me." "And what do you think is best for you?" He didn't answer right away. "I love you," he said finally, "but I love my family too. And they've made it clear that staying with you means consequences." Cold spread through my chest. "What kind of consequences?" "They'll restructure trusts, reduce my role in decisions, freeze me out financially." "So they're blackmailing you." "That's harsh." "It's accurate." He ran a hand through his hair. "They think they're protecting me. They think you're not stable enough." "The life they want for you," I said quietly. "Or the life you want." His voice cracked. "I don't know anymore." There it was. Exhaustion. Fear. Dependency. "So you're giving up," I said. "I'm being realistic." I should have begged. Should have argued harder. Instead, something inside me went very still. "If you're looking for permission to leave," I said softly, "you have it." His head snapped up. "That's it? You're not going to fight for me?" I have been fighting, I replied, by showing up, by enduring their scrutiny, by believing you'd choose us eventually. Tears slid down his face. I needed you to push harder. I needed you to stand. 2 days later, he texted. He'd decided to give Victoria another chance. It wasn't about money, he said. It was about peace, about not fighting his family every day. I didn't respond. I blocked his number. And then I started planning something he would never see coming. The first month after Daniel left was mechanical. I woke up, I worked, I exercised, I slept. I didn't stalk his social media. I didn't ask mutual friends for updates. I didn't replay our last conversation on a loop. Not because I was strong, because I was tired. But beneath that exhaustion, something sharper was forming. 6 months before the breakup, a former client had approached me about launching a specialized consulting firm focused on operational efficiency for mid-size manufacturing companies. It would mean real risk, real scale, real pressure. I'd declined. I was comfortable then, in love, planning weekends, not expansion strategies. Now comfort was gone. I called him back. Is the offer still on the table? I asked. There was a pause. Then, I was hoping you'd say that. We met the next day. Terms: equity split, roles, capital requirements. I liquidated investments without hesitation. We launched in 3 weeks. The work was brutal. 18-hour days, weekends swallowed by client proposals, red-eye flights to industrial cities no one romanticizes. It was exactly what I needed. 3 months in, we landed our first major client, a regional manufacturing company, drowning in supply chain inefficiencies. I embedded with them for 6 weeks, ate in the factory cafeteria, interviewed line supervisors, rebuilt their procurement processes from the ground up. When we presented the performance improvements, measurable, significant, the CEO stared at the numbers like he was looking at a miracle. He referred us to 2 other companies. By month 6, we had 8 clients. By month 9, we were profitable. By month 9, I couldn't remember the last time I'd thought about Daniel before falling asleep. One afternoon, one of our junior consultants hesitated in my doorway. I don't know if this is appropriate, he said, but I ran into someone who knows Daniel. I didn't look up from my screen. And he's engaged to Victoria. 6 months. 6 months after leaving me, he was planning a wedding. I waited for something. Anger, grief, humiliation. Nothing came. Noted, I said calmly. Close the Peterson file before you leave. When he walked out, I sat still for a full minute. It wasn't that I didn't care. It was that I cared about something else now. Update 1. 10 months after the breakup, a private equity firm reached out. They'd been tracking our growth. They liked our model. They wanted to discuss acquisition. We flew to meet them. They slid numbers across the table that would have changed my life entirely. My partner wanted to sell. I wanted to build. We negotiated. Instead of acquisition, we accepted an investment. 30% equity for capital infusion and strategic backing. We kept control. And I walked away with enough liquidity to never worry about money again. When I told my parents, my mother cried. My father, who had taught public high school math for 32 years, just kept shaking his head. You built this yourself, he said quietly. No one handed it to you. That sentence meant more than the numbers. I bought a house, not ostentatious, just clean lines, natural light, a home office big enough to grow into. I wasn't showing off. I was stabilizing. Around month 14, I was invited to speak at an industry conference. A case study had been written about our first manufacturing turnaround. They wanted me on a panel about operational transformation. The location made my stomach tighten. It was in Daniel's city, the same city where I'd once sat through marble-floored dinners, trying to prove I belonged. I almost declined. My partner didn't let me. This is exposure, he said. We don't shrink because someone else couldn't stand tall. So I prepared. I flew in 2 days early. Walked the streets I used to know. Nothing felt nostalgic. Just smaller. The panel went better than expected. Afterward, people approached me with business cards and strategic questions. I was in the middle of explaining scalability metrics when someone said my name. I turned. It was Mark, an acquaintance from Daniel's social circle, friendly but loyal to whichever side seemed stronger at the time. Elena, I didn't know you were speaking here. I didn't advertise it. He asked what I'd been doing. I gave him the concise version. The firm, the growth, the investment deal. His expression shifted gradually. Polite interest to surprise to something resembling respect. That's incredible, he said. It's been busy. There's a reception tonight. You should come. I hesitated for half a second. Then I nodded. The reception was at a downtown hotel ballroom. Chandeliers, polished floors, expensive fabric, and calculated laughter. I worked the room efficiently. conversations, cards, strategic alignment. Then I saw them. Daniel's father, his brother, members of their social circle. They hadn't seen me yet. His father stood in the center of a cluster of executives, radiating that same effortless authority, the kind that assumes correctness by default. For a moment, I watched him. This man who had assessed me like a liability, who had orchestrated my quiet replacement. I could have walked over, could have introduced myself again, not as the tolerated girlfriend, but as the keynote speaker's headline act. Instead, I turned, left through a side exit, sat in my car, and breathed. It wasn't fear. It wasn't avoidance. It was restraint. I wasn't there to prove anything to them. I was there to build something beyond them. When I drove away, I didn't feel small. I felt patient. And patience, I'd learned, is far more dangerous than anger. I thought the conference would be the only time I'd need to return to that city. I was wrong. A week after I flew home, my partner forwarded me an email. Subject line, Consortium Inquiry, Confidential. A regional manufacturing consortium, 12 companies under one umbrella, needed a complete operational overhaul. 7-figure budget, multi-phase engagement, reputation defining. This is the kind of contract that changes trajectory, my partner said. Then he hesitated. It's based in Daniel's city. Of course it was. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling. I thought about marble dining tables and strategic seating charts. I thought about Victoria's polite smile. I thought about Daniel asking me why I wouldn't fight harder for him. I'm fine with it, I said finally. Let's pursue. We submitted a proposal, flew out for presentations, won the contract. I would be spending significant time in the city that once quietly rejected me. 2 months into the project, I had dinner with the consortium's executive director, a sharp, pragmatic woman who respected results more than pedigree. Midway through dessert, she mentioned she served on the board of a local business organization. Daniel's father used to be heavily involved, she said casually. He stepped back recently. Family issues. I kept my expression neutral. Small world. You know him? We've met. She took a sip of wine. I heard his son's marriage isn't going well. Surprising, given how much the family's pushed for it. I didn't ask for details, but the information settled somewhere quiet inside me. Not satisfaction. Not vindication. Just confirmation. 2 weeks later, I attended a local executive networking lunch tied to the consortium. I walked into the private dining room and froze. Daniel stood across the room. For a split second, my body reacted before my mind did, a tightening in my chest, a memory of the way his voice used to soften when he said my name. He looked different, thinner. His posture slightly collapsed inward, like someone bracing against invisible wind. His suit was immaculate, expensive, precise, but it wore him instead of the other way around. He was talking to a small group, nodding, smiling at appropriate intervals. But the smile didn't reach his eyes. I considered turning around. The host spotted me. Elena, perfect timing. There it was, no escape without spectacle. So I walked forward, measured, composed, professional. I joined the host's circle, aware of Daniel's presence about 6 feet away. Close enough to feel, far enough to pretend. The host introduced me enthusiastically, mentioned the consortium project, our growth, the private equity investment. I answered questions, discussed scalability, workforce optimization, strategic reinvestment. Then, someone from Daniel's group said they were looking for operational consulting support. The host beamed. You need to talk to her. Elena's firm is doing incredible work. The two circles merged. Daniel turned. Our eyes met. 2 years collapsed into a single heartbeat. His face went pale. His lips parted slightly, like he'd forgotten how breathing worked. I held his gaze for exactly 1 second. Then I looked at the executive who had asked the question and continued speaking. Detached, precise, unaffected. If my pulse was racing, no one could tell. Daniel didn't speak. After about 2 minutes, he murmured something about another meeting and excused himself. As he set his water glass down, I noticed his hand trembling. The host leaned toward me once he was out of earshot. That seemed loaded. You two know each other? Used to, I replied evenly. His wife's in finance, right? Big merger recently, though I've heard they're having some strain. Family expectations. You know how it is. I nodded. I do. I left shortly after. Not because I couldn't handle it. Because I didn't need to. That night in my hotel room, I expected delayed emotion. A crash. Instead, I felt something unfamiliar. Distance. Not forced. Not performative. Real. I didn't want to rewind. I didn't want an explanation. I didn't even want revenge. For the first time, I understood something with uncomfortable clarity. I no longer needed him to regret it, because I no longer needed him at all. Update 3. Over the next few weeks, I began hearing through mutual contacts that Daniel had been asking about me. How was I doing? Was I seeing anyone? Was I happy? One friend called directly. He asked for your number, she admitted. Said he wants to talk. What did you tell him? Nothing yet. Tell him no. A pause. He sounded not okay, Elena. He made a choice, I said calmly. He doesn't get to revisit it because it's inconvenient now. She agreed, but he didn't stop trying. He appeared at another networking event where he knew I'd be speaking, positioned himself near the back of the room, close enough to catch my eye. I never looked. If he wanted closure, he could find it within himself. I wasn't a resource to be reactivated. Then things escalated. About 4 months into the consortium project, my partner walked into my office with an expression I hadn't seen before. You're not going to like this. What is it? We just received a formal consultation request. From? He hesitated. Daniel's family real estate company. Of course. The timing was surgical. Operational review of their property management systems. Substantial fee. Long-term potential. It feels deliberate, my partner said. Like a setup. It is. Do you want to take it? I didn't answer immediately. Years ago, I would have seen it as validation. Now it felt like bait. Decline, I said, politely. Site capacity. He nodded. 2 days later, my partner received a direct call from Daniel's father. He tried to sweeten the deal. Insisted it was purely professional. When my partner declined again, he asked if personal feelings were clouding business judgment. My partner told him, calmly, that we don't engage where prior personal relationships create conflicts of interest. The line went quiet, then disconnected. A week later, I received an email, not to my personal address, to my public work email, from Daniel. My cursor hovered over it for a long moment before I clicked, and the first line made my stomach tighten. I know you don't want to hear from me. I know you don't want to hear from me. I read the sentence 3 times before continuing. I understand why you blocked me. I deserve that. But there are things I should have said 2 years ago and didn't have the courage to. I leaned back in my chair. Courage. An interesting word. He wrote that leaving me was the biggest mistake of his life. That from the outside, his marriage looked perfect. Aligned families, strategic connections, immaculate public image. Inside, it was hollow. We don't fight, he wrote. We negotiate. Everything is a negotiation, even affection. My chest tightened despite myself. He said he chose peace over conflict, security over uncertainty, approval over love. And I've regretted it every day since. There it was, the confession. The validation my ego should have savored. But as I continued reading, what I felt wasn't triumph. It was distance. He admitted that his family's expectations hadn't stopped after the wedding. They had intensified. Joint investments, strategic appearances, political donations, public alignment. Victoria fit seamlessly into that machine. He did not. You were right, he wrote. They were blackmailing me, and I let them. My eyes lingered on that line. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect a second chance. I just needed you to know that I see it now. I see what I gave up. I closed the email. Sat in silence. 2 years ago, those words would have shattered me. Now they felt like a delayed echo. I deleted the message. No response. Update 4. He tried again. Through another mutual friend. She just needs closure, the friend insisted. He says he needs to apologize in person. He already made his choice, I replied. Closure isn't a meeting, it's a decision. Then he started appearing more deliberately. At business breakfasts. At evening networking receptions. Never directly approaching. Just hovering in proximity. Waiting. Once I saw him at a coffee shop near my hotel while I was reviewing slides for a client presentation. He walked in, saw me instantly. I watched recognition flood his face, hope, fear, desperation. Before he could take a single step toward my table, I closed my laptop, stood, and left through the side exit. No drama, no confrontation, just absence. 3 days later, another email arrived. Shorter this time. I get it. You've moved on. You've built everything I was too afraid to believe in. Watching you succeed has been harder than losing you. Not because I resent it, but because I finally understand what I walked away from. I hope you're happy. You deserve to be. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then, for the first time, I replied. One line. I hope you find what you're looking for, but you won't find it looking backward. I blocked his email address. That chapter was closed. The consortium project wrapped successfully. We secured 3 additional referrals. Our firm's presence in the region solidified. 6 months later, word spread quietly through professional circles. Daniel had filed for divorce. The families were in dispute over prenup clauses and shared investments. His father was reportedly furious. Victoria's family was threatening legal action. When I heard, I felt nothing. No satisfaction. No vindication. Just a calm acknowledgement that consequences have timelines. Around that time, I started seeing someone. His name is Marcus Hale. We met through work. He's a CFO for one of our long-term clients. Self-made, sharp, grew up working class, paid his way through college, built everything through competence, not inheritance. There was no evaluation phase, no social audition. On our third date, he told me, "I don't care what room you can walk into. I care how you treat the waiter." It was simple, grounded, in the real sense of the word. I told him about Daniel early on, not dramatically, not as baggage. As context. Marcus listened without interruption. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if he'd chosen you?" he asked one evening. "Sometimes," I admitted, "but I think the pressure would have found us eventually. He didn't lose me because of his family. He lost me because he couldn't stand alone." Marcus nodded once. "That's the difference." It was. Update 5. 8 months after Daniel's last email, I delivered a keynote at a major industry conference. Not a panel. A keynote. The ballroom was full. When the Q&A began, someone asked about early career obstacles. I didn't plan to mention him, but the truth came naturally. "I once spent years with someone whose family didn't think I was good enough," I said. "It hurt. It made me question myself, but eventually I realized their metrics were flawed. So instead of arguing with them, I built something that made their approval irrelevant." The room responded, not with applause at first, but with stillness. Recognition. After the session, several people approached me to share similar stories. Later, a mutual acquaintance told me something I hadn't expected. "Daniel was there," she said quietly. "He bought a ticket specifically to hear you speak." I absorbed that without reaction. "He cried during your talk, left immediately after." I nodded. "Do you want to know how he's doing now?" "No," I said honestly. "I don't." Because I didn't. His journey was no longer adjacent to mine. The last time I saw Daniel's father, it wasn't at a dinner table. It was in a ballroom where I was the one holding the microphone. I'd been invited back to that same city for another conference, this time as the closing keynote. Our firm had grown to 20 consultants across 3 offices. We were handling projects I used to think were reserved for legacy firms with inherited reputations. My parents joked that they needed to schedule appointments to see me. Marcus came with me on that trip. He didn't hover, didn't posture, didn't seem threatened by rooms full of ambitious executives. He squeezed my hand before I walked on stage. "They're here because of you," he said, "not your past." The presentation went long. Engaged audience, sharp questions. I felt steady in a way that had nothing to do with confidence and everything to do with alignment. When I finished, the applause wasn't thunderous. It was sustained, earned. Afterward, as clusters of attendees formed around the stage, I saw him. Daniel's father. Older, slightly diminished, still impeccably dressed. He had stayed for the entire presentation. He waited until the crowd thinned before approaching. "Elena," he said, offering a measured nod. "Impressive work. Very impressive." "Thank you," I replied evenly. He adjusted his cufflinks, a nervous habit I remembered from dinners long ago. "I may have misjudged your potential." There it was. The closest thing to an apology I would ever get. I studied him for a moment. This was the man who had orchestrated my quiet evaluation, who had reintroduced Victoria into Daniel's orbit with surgical precision, who had framed my ambition as instability. "I appreciate you saying that," I said calmly, "but your judgment doesn't define me." It never did. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. He nodded once. Then he walked away. And as I watched him disappear into the crowd, I waited. For vindication. For triumph. For resentment. Nothing came. Just stillness. That was the moment I understood something fully. Moving on isn't when you stop remembering. It's when the people who once judged you become irrelevant to how you see yourself. Later that evening, Marcus and I walked back to the hotel through cool autumn air. "You okay?" he asked. "I'm better than okay." "Closure?" I considered the word. "Not closure," I said. "Perspective." A few months after that conference, word circulated that Daniel's divorce had finalized. The prenup dispute had been messy. Both families had suffered reputational bruises in business circles. Some mutual contacts mentioned he'd stepped back from certain family operations, that he was trying to establish something independent. I hoped he was. Truly. Because the version of him I loved had always wanted autonomy. He just hadn't wanted it badly enough. One afternoon, nearly 3 years after our breakup, I received a handwritten note at my office. No return address. Inside, a single line in familiar handwriting. "You were right about standing. No request. No apology. No plea. Just acknowledgement." I folded the paper once, placed it in a drawer, and went back to work. Marcus and I have been together almost a year now. It's quiet in a way my relationship with Daniel never was. No performance. No invisible audience. No measuring against inherited standards. Just two people choosing each other daily. Once over dinner, Marcus asked, "If Daniel had chosen you back then, truly chosen you, would you still be here?" I thought about it longer this time. No, I said honestly, because I wouldn't have been forced to become this version of myself. Pain had been a catalyst. Rejection had been acceleration. But the decision that mattered most wasn't his. It was mine. The choice not to beg, not to audition, not to shrink. I still do business in that city. I still occasionally see members of Daniel's social circle at events. We exchange professional nods. Nothing more. And that's enough. He chose security and approval. I chose dignity and autonomy. We both live with those choices. The difference is this: I would make mine again without hesitation.